You're good.
Thanks everyone for coming. I had an opportunity to talk to some of our parents and community people that are here. Thank you to our principals who took the time to make it as well, and certainly our school board. We are recording tonight's session, so if you know people who weren't here tonight and they want to hear it, we are going to put the recording on our district website so that other people have the same information as well. Please also let everyone know that these packets will be available at our district office in our schools, so if someone has information that they can pick up this PowerPoint packet as well, so they have that information. So again, thank you for coming tonight. Kind of give you an idea of some of the things that we hope to accomplish tonight. We've had really good luck and really good input from our staff and from our community members in the past that have supported the district in the past with the interest in current challenges. The district is considering bringing an operational referendum to our voters on April 4th of 2023, so this next spring. A survey was just sent to all of our community members yesterday. Our parents and our staff received that earlier through an email. Hopefully we get a great turnout, answering some questions, and hopefully people have an opportunity to fill out that questionnaire and survey and get it back to us. There's still time to complete the survey. It's not due till October 17th, 2022. Those surveys are going to be available at all of our schools and at the district office. So if you know someone who didn't get one and needs to get one, they're available at all our schools and our district office. We also have them available in Spanish, so please let anybody know that as well. Tonight, this is kind of the things that we hope to accomplish. We want to give you an overview of the situation, the reason that we're asking our community to consider a referendum. We're going to tell you the possible referendum, what it's going to look like, the amount, and the impact that's going to have on our residents. And then we hope to we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end if anybody has any for us. I'm going to now turn it over. We're going to have a couple speakers tonight. Next up is Dr. Andy Bate. He's our Director of Curriculum and Instruction. And then following Andy, I will speak a little bit, and then we'll turn it over to our expert and our Assistant Superintendent, Keith Lucius, who's the Director of Business Services.
All right, thank you, Kurt. As he said, my name is Andy Bake. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Instruction. This is my first year in this role, but I've been with the district for about 20 years as a teacher, an elementary administrator, and now again, this first year in this role. One of the things I'm going to take just a few moments to talk about as we get started tonight is just talking about the tradition of the district and some of the reasons why there's so much community pride for both our village and our district. When I think about me accepting a teaching job here 20 years ago, I really took this position because it was a good position. I had heard good things about the district, but my wife and I had a home in another district. We were happy in that home. We really had no intention of becoming a part of the Ashwaubenon community at that time. But I think what I've heard time and time again from my neighbors and from people who work in the district, and as my wife and I found for ourselves, the Ashwaubenon School District really is something special and offers things for our families and offers things for our staff members that you can't always find in other places. And it wasn't long after I began working in the district that my wife and I realized that we did want to move to the district. We did want our children to come to this district. And often, it's very common, as I said, when I'm talking to my neighbors about the fact that although their children have moved out of their home and they maybe would consider downsizing, things like that, they don't want to leave Ashwaubenon. They find so much value in being a part of this community and a part of this district that they continue to remain in the district. You could flip to the next slide. Those things don't always happen or rarely happen just by happen chance. It's really not by accident. It's because of commitments that a district and a community make towards meeting the goals of educating all our students. Also not by accident is the fact that as a district we have exceeded expectations on the state report card for many years now. The work that we do with our students is great work, and our students learn a great deal and make great progress every single year. And again, that's in large part because of these commitments. First of all, providing the highest quality programs. We spend a lot of time when we select our educational programs, ensuring that we're choosing programs that are research-based, that have proven results of student success in other districts, or, like I said, a lot of research behind them. Thinking about some of our programs, our curriculum for literacy at the K-8 level is a program that's been developed by literacy experts with Columbia University. Our teachers have done a lot of their actual learning about the program and the teaching of literacy through Columbia University, and that's just kind of one example of the time and effort we put into ensuring that we have the right programs. Maintaining a healthy and safe learning environment. One of the things that makes the Schwabenon so special as well is our partnership with our village. And one of the biggest parts of maintaining a healthy, safe learning environment is our partnerships with places like Schwabenon Public Safety and the Park and Rec Department that work with us to ensure that our playgrounds are well taken care of, for example, through Park and Rec, that we have that great relationship with public safety, ensuring that our staff is well trained in the event of crisis, things like that. That's something that, again, adds great value to our district. Being proactive agents of change, really meaning that as a district, we aren't afraid to change if necessary. There's times where we realize that some of our programs might not be getting us the results that we were hoping for. As a district, we're always open and looking for what's best for our students. So if what we're doing isn't the best, we are always open to changing. Being responsible stewards of district resources is something that we take very seriously. As a district, we know that we have limited resources. We know that we've had limited resources in our district for as long as I've been in the district, for 20 years. And because of that, we take great effort to ensure that we're using those resources responsibly and ensuring that we're using the things that we have very carefully. Engaging our community in the educational process. Having our senior volunteers in our buildings, having other volunteers in our building is important to us. Ensuring that we're having things like this week. I know our elementary schools have open houses to get our parents into the buildings and learning more about what their students are learning about. All those things are things that we know is important to ensure that we continue to be successful in the district. And finally, monitoring and evaluating results for continuous improvement. Ensuring, again, that we are constantly looking at data from our students and ensuring that they're making the progress that we're hoping for. Are all things that help to make us so successful. A few things that make the Schwabenon School District something that's of value to our community and to our families is knowing that the Schwabenon, when people are looking for homes, looking for a place to live, there's many reasons people choose the Schwabenon. Certainly we are a destination for entertainment and a destination for shopping, but we're also highly sought after because of our school district, and people move to a Schwabenon because of the school district and the things that we offer our students. As far as staff goes, the average tenure for a staff member at the Schwabenon School District is about 24 years, and typical staff tenure in the state of Wisconsin is 15 years. So again, that shows that our staff, once they come to a Schwabenon, tend to stay in a Schwabenon, and many of our staff members start their career in a Schwabenon and end their career in a Schwabenon because of it being a great place to work and because of the support that our community has for our district and the support that our team or our board has for the work that they do. And then last but not least, remembering that we are a destination for education because about 1/3 of our students here in the Schwabenon School District, 1,211 this year, are open enrolled, meaning they are students that live in another district but choose to come to a Schwabenon because of the programs that we offer, and that does result. I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding, and maybe Keith will speak to this a little bit more later too, that open enrollments may be a cost to the district, but in reality, as it says up there, because of those open enrolled students, it's actually a $9.5 million increase in state funding that the district receives. So again, that tradition we have of excellence is part of what helps to fund the great programs that we have in the district.
Thank you, Andy. Well stated, and I think that our parents and our residents and our students and our staff really value the education that we provide, and we're very proud, as you can tell, of the things that we offer. The referendum is designed to allow the district to continue the quality of our current programs. Nothing new. There'll be no shiny new building. Nothing new will be added with the funds. And without the budget relief, we will need to make significant budget changes. So as we get further into the slides, you'll see that without passing this referendum, there's going to be a significant amount of cuts that has to be made, and some very tough decisions have to be made regarding our budget. I think the point in red, we really want to emphasize over and over again, you're going to hear this several times throughout the presentation. The school board agrees to eliminate or reduce the amount of the referendum approved by the levy. So whatever our residents approve, we will eliminate or reduce that amount if the state budget provides the district with budget relief equal to that amount of inflation used to calculate the amount of the referendum. So basically what we're saying, and we'll have a couple slides later on, if we're asking for this much money to be levied, the state then provides this much support, then we won't levy that amount of money. And so obviously the referendum could be down to hardly anything, or it could be the full amount depending on what the state does. Now, we feel very good that the state's going to provide some. We're just not confident right now of what that amount is going to be. School districts are no different than you and I. We all live in a village, we pay our taxes, we have gone to the gas pumps. The current economy inflation hits us no different than it hits any other business, any other individuals who live in our district. Inflation has increased costs significantly, approximately 4.7 for the 2021. We're estimating, based on we keep track of this every single day, and right now it's estimated to be just over 8% for 2022, and estimated to be around 7% in 2023. Again, this is something that Keith and I look at every single day and are estimating where we're going to be in regards to trying to figure out our budget. Significant increases in contracted services like busing. We've all been to the pumps. We know what it costs to fill up our vehicles. Like busing and cleaning are all gone up significantly. Staffing costs have also increased. Important to note, though, even though that the inflation was at 4.7, we settled with our staff at a 3% increase for this past school year. So even our staff did not get the increase to inflation. Supply chain issues have made it more expensive to get supplies and materials. And the bottom line, this is really probably the most important point, the state budget did not provide any increase for school budgets. The state budget did not provide any increase for school budgets. So there's no increase in the state revenue limit for the 2021-22 and the 22-23 school year. So last year and this year. Many of you have probably heard of something that's called federal ESSER funds. You've probably heard of ESSER funds. It was COVID relief. It was money that was designated to school districts across the country to spend to help kids that might have had some learning loss or some delays with learning in regards to COVID. We used those funds to do exactly what they asked us to do in regards to provide staffing, additional staffing, to help support those students. We had great success with that. Unfortunately, because the ESSER funding is a one-time money, we had to get rid of some of those positions for this current school year. Additional state aid in 2022-23 resulted in property tax relief. So there was some state aid that was provided by the state, but that went to you and I. That went to property tax relief. Not a dime went to schools. Okay? This is what's happening in the state of Wisconsin. In 2020, Wisconsin ranked 25th in the U.S. on spending per student, down from the 2002 ranking of 11 nationally. So in 2002, 20 years ago, we were the 11th highest in spending per student. As of 2 years ago, we were 25th, and it's continuing to drop from there. Wisconsin school spending is now 5% 5.6% below the national average on a per pupil basis. So you can see where we were in 2002 and where we are in 2020. Without an increase in the district budget, we cannot maintain the same quality programs that we have pride in, that we continually offer year in and year out. We have been in a budget cutting environment for over 20 years, as you heard Dr. Bake mention, and options for reductions are limited. One of those options is increased class size, reduce course offerings, reduce athletic and activity opportunities, reduce technology, reduce spending on building maintenance, to delay and reduce curriculum. Without an increase in budget, most, if not all, of these options will be needed.
Okay, so I'm going to walk you through how we came up with the amount that we're surveying the community on for the referendum, the possible amount that we're looking at. As Superintendent Myers mentioned, the state did not include an inflationary increase in the revenue limit per member for 21-22 or 22-23. So we saw no increase in our overall budget. The state provided us equalization aid, which when the revenue limit doesn't increase, then becomes property tax relief. So our budget couldn't grow. That additional aid they provided to us became property tax relief for the community. Property tax relief is a great thing. I like it when my taxes go down. There's nothing wrong with that, but we're sitting with a budget where costs are increasing quickly, and we're not able to increase our budget to match that. It's unknown what the state's going to do in the next 2-year budget cycle. We've talked with elected officials. There really isn't any plan that's being communicated that what will happen with this next 2-year budget. So next spring will be the state will be developing their budget and setting school finance parameters. So we don't know what they're going to do, and there's been talk of a wide range of options, but we need to protect the district in case they don't cover inflation in that next 2-year budget. And that's what this is. That's why, as Superintendent Weyer said, the board has committed that we will not levy the full amount of what the referendum, if a referendum is approved, if the state gives us the increase in the revenue. So we're protecting our programs in our district against what might happen at the state level. So how did we come up with the amount that we're asking? So on the survey, you'll see a question of $4.9 million or $3.9 million as two options. How did we come up with the $4.9 million? It sounds like a kind of random number to sound just under $5 million, but there is math behind that. So if you look at 2020, inflation was 1.23%. Our current revenue limit amount per student is just over $10,000. So at 1.2%, we'd get about a $124 increase in that revenue limit to keep up with inflation. If we look at this year that just ended, the 2021-22 year, inflation was at 4.7%. That would have been another $482 or just over that to keep up with inflation in our budget. And then if we look at, for this year that we're just started now, inflation, we're estimating about 8.2% based on 3/4 of the year through that calculation. That increase on that $10,000 per student would be another $882 per student. And then we estimate 7% of inflation for the following year. That's an estimate based on what we're hearing from the economists out there that's saying the inflation isn't going to just end, it's going to slowly go down and stabilize. So we're estimating 7%, that's another $814 on the revenue limit. So if you add those four numbers together, you get a revenue limit per member increase of $2,305.44 just to keep up with inflation. So as we said, we're not adding anything new. This isn't to do something different. This is to maintain what we've been doing. The reason that we feel our schools are doing so well and that people choose to come to our school. Go ahead. So if we take that $2,305 and we multiply it by the number of resident students, and Dr. Bake talked about this earlier, revenue limit is only based on our resident students. So open enrollment students, our taxpayers do not pay a penny of taxes related to open enrollment students. That's all paid by the resident district to us. So we just count our resident students. So we have over 3,000 students in the district. but we have 2,161 of them that are resident students. So our tax levy is based on the resident students. So if we multiply the $2,305 by the 2,161 resident students, it comes to $4,982,055.84. So that's how we came to the $4.9 million as the number that we are asking about for a possible referendum. Any questions on that? I know that's a complicated, multi-step process to get to that dollar. Yes, Michelle.
So what was the amount for open enrollment? And then did that stay the same also, the amount for money for open enrollment students?
So the question was, did the amount for open enrollment students increase with inflation? The amount for open enrollment students did not increase with inflation. That amount increases based on school spending. So that amount, we're not seeing that same increase, but we don't know what that's going to be next year until the state comes back with that calculation. It did increase this year, even though our revenue limit did not increase. So there's a lot of factors that play into that number. So we've been seeing some increase in that number. There are some reasons that at the state level they want that number to increase because it's also tied to the school choice, the private school choice. So that number typically does increase and has in most years increased more than what our per student in the revenue limit has increased. Does that answer the question? Question back.
So can you explain two things? One, the 5 years, and then what's the sliding scale on the 5 years for inflation, assuming inflation will have a sliding scale down over 5 years?
Okay, so it's really, the 4 years is what we're looking at. So we've calculated the amount of change for those 4 years. So the last 2 years where we didn't get an increase and we used those federal ESSER funds to balance our budget, where we feel we should have gotten an increase in revenue limit because that's one-time money that's now been spent, and we're going to have our ESSER funds spent. So we need to make up for what we didn't get in the last 2-year state budget, and then we're projecting for the next 2-year state budget, which starts in July next year. And that's when this referendum would take effect, would be in that next budget. So that's where we're coming from. I'm not sure I understand the question about the sliding scale.
So if you think about inflation, right? We just notated next year it probably starts to come down. It's going to come down. How does that play into the 5 years, and does that automatically adjust because inflation necessarily adjusts in your budget?
Okay, so when inflation goes down, that doesn't mean prices go back down. When inflation goes up and prices go up, when inflation would be zero, the prices stay at that new level. I'm not seeing any projections of a negative inflation or prices coming back down overall. And if that happens, then we will adjust and make those changes. But typically, when you look historically what's happened with inflation, once they go up, that's where the new prices are, and wages go up, and that's where the wages stay. And we'll obviously see where that goes because we're projecting a year out on inflation. We don't have any adjustment factored in there. That goes back to what the board has the authority to do as far as what they actually levy when we get to that point. So if we get to the fourth year of our 4-year calculation and it's less than 7%, we'll have discussions at the board and they can make that determination on what the appropriate amount to levy is. And one of those factors will also be what does the state give us as far as aid in those years as well. So that will reduce the impact when we start talking about the impact on individual taxes. But that there isn't, in what we can ask in a referendum question, we have to have a set dollar amount. So that's why we set the dollar amount at $4.9 million, and we're giving the board the authority to go less than that if actual circumstances are lower than that. Does that answer your question, Josh?
I just want to make sure I understood what's on that one in the red ink. So when you say 4.9 per year for 5 years, what you're really asking for is a grand total of 24.5. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the math and the graphics.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So that's what it would be for 5 years. And that doesn't take into account what inflation does the last 3 years of that. So we'll be in most likely budget cutting mode at that time as well, unless the state gives us inflationary increases. And as Kurt mentioned earlier, we've been in budget cutting mode for 24 years now, 23 years, where every year we're making adjustments and making budget reductions to balance the budget. And we've gotten to the point where when you look at our spending per student, our district is one of the highest in the state as far as the amount that is focused on the classroom and on teachers, because class size has been one of our driving factors, one of our main focuses. So we've kept our class size small, and that's why we're looking at class sizes would have to be impacted if we don't get this referendum. Any other questions?
Just curious about the residents per student increase. What is that increase? It's 2305, but like from last year, the year before, that's the increase right
So
there.
that's the increase right there, so
Resident.
the increase over the 10,149.81 that we're currently at, we've been locked in at for 4 years.
And then the state budget, it says did not include the inflationary increase. I mean, give or take the last couple of years, what was the state's budget for the school? And what did they provide versus what was given per the next slide? Per student, whatever we had.
On the revenue limit, they gave 0.
That's what I just wanted to clarify.
So they gave nothing. So it's a good question, and one of the points of confusion that some people have. The state, and the state elected officials will talk about this, that they funded schools more this year than they have historically. They gave schools more aid, but they didn't give us the revenue limit room. So in effect, what they did is they gave us an inflationary increase in aid without giving us the ability to inflationary increase our budget, so it became property tax relief.
Yeah.
So that's what, and I know that that's why we're spending time on this, because it is a confusing calculation to understand, because politicians will say they funded schools at record levels, and they did. They gave record levels of an aid increase, but they didn't give us the ability to adjust our budget at all.
Thank you.
Great question.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a point that I'm trying to make sure I help people understand.
We're glad you asked it, because it'll be great for the video, so.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so one of the things I want to talk about is we're going to talk about mill rates when we talk about impact, because it's really hard to compare school district tax burden from one district to another. It wouldn't be fair to compare Ashwaubenon's total tax levy, the total dollars in tax, to Green Bay, just because of sheer size, it wouldn't be fair. So what mill rate does is it gives us an ability to compare tax burden between districts that's based on a property value of $1,000. So when we talk mill rates, the mill rate is calculated by the tax levy, which is the total dollars that the district requests as far as taxes, divided by the total property value in the district, multiplied by 1,000. So that gives us a rate that we can compare between districts to talk about tax burden that you'll see, and you can compare Green Bay to Ashwaubenon to West Appear to Milwaukee to whatever district in the state you want to compare to. And I also want to talk about this as an equalized property value. So the state is doing a calculation. Every municipality has different assessed rates. The state does something called equalizing that they have to do so they can share the aid fairly. So they do the equalized property values to determine the value in each district so we can do that comparison. So it won't match perfectly with an assessed mill rate, which is what the village will do when we give them the total tax dollars. They put it out based on their assessed rates. That'll vary a little bit, but it gives us a comparison so everyone's on the same footing. So now we talk about how much does this cost. Once we understand what a mill rate does, what this is going to cost, the impact if nothing is passed, if we go forward without this referendum, $1.96 in the mill rate. So if you want a $100,000 house or property, you're looking at $196 each year of this 5-year referendum. In reality, I think that's overstating what the impact is, because if the state gives us any additional aid, that will reduce that impact. And the state, there hasn't been a year where the state hasn't given some additional aid. They just, some years haven't given us the revenue limit increase along with it. So that's the maximum impact. That mill rate will decrease as property values increase, and it will decrease if the state gives us aid. So the cost of a $100,000 house is $196 annually. The recent trend in mill rate shows that our mill rate has been declining. And one of the things you'll see when you look at the at the survey we sent out, we tried to show that trend over the years, and we are below the state average on mill rate, meaning we're spending less and taxing less per student or per property value than the average district is in the state, and we've seen that trend go down significantly. So if this referendum passes at 4.9 million, which is the largest number we put on the survey that we sent out, the mill rate is estimated to be 31 cents below where it was in 2017-18, because we've seen those decreases. What's happened is the state's given us more aid without giving us inflationary increases on the mill rate, so we've seen our mill rate go down each year. So we'll basically, with this referendum, it would put us back at 2017-18 taxes. So not that long ago, something that we were all paying already, those of us who lived here that long. So I think it's a good frame of reference on what this means. It's not a huge increase over what we've historically paid. Next slide, Kurt. So here is a graphic representation of it. So you can see the red line is the state average, and the blue bars are our mill rate. And you can see since 2014-15, our mill rate was $10.05, and has gone down now, and we're projecting for this coming year that we're at about $6.80. So we're seeing a significant downward trend in our mill rate, and that's because the state has provided that aid, but not provided the revenue limit room over the years. And we've seen some changes in our demographics as well. But it's a good trend all the way around. The blue bars on the 4 or 5 bars on the right are what would happen with the referendum. So you can see that we would jump up to $8.76 on our mill rate, and then it shows slight decreases each year because I assumed a 2% increase in property values. This does not assume any additional aid from the state. Additional aid from the state would also reduce this more. So how did mill rate projections from the previous referendum compare to actual? So a couple of years ago, we were here talking about safety upgrades, air conditioning, adding some student support services, things like that. And we came to the community and said, we need to add some of these things and increase some of our services. So what this slide is meant to help us understand is what we told you at that meeting and what actually happened. Did we live up to our promise? Did we do better or worse than what we forecast at that time? So when we look at the 2020 referendum, we projected the mill rate to be $8.25. We said we will keep that mill rate below that if everything passes. And when we look at what's actually happened, instead of $8.25, we were at $7.81, $7.61, and this year we're estimating $6.82. So we've done much better than what we had shown at the referendum informational meetings. And that is because I'm conservative when it is. We're going to, if what we promise you, we're going to meet or exceed that. We're going to do better than what we do if possible, but we're not going to be above that. And that's our commitment is we watch those mill rates and we track that. And there are other factors in there like that state aid increasing, even though they didn't increase the revenue limit, that helped reduce our mill rate as well. But I think it's part of helping you know this is where we are and this is how we know, this is how we project it, that we're conservative and we're not going to come back with actual mill rates significantly above what we're projecting here. Okay, Kurt, can we go to the next? Okay, so a lot of questions on what does it mean when we say the board will not levy this if the state gives us the revenue limit room and the ability to extend our budget. What does that mean? So I thought I'd give a good example where the DPI recently submitted or published their budget recommendations to the state. DPI went to the legislature and said, this is what we think you should do in school finance in the next state budget. So how would that impact this referendum? What does that mean? So in the DPI budget, they included a per pupil increase of $24 in 23-24 in per pupil aid. That's separate from revenue limited, separate aid, but we're counting that because that increases our funding. And then they included a revenue limit per pupil of $350. So what does that do in 2023? It provides us $808,000 roughly of additional revenue or additional budget room. So if this referendum passed at 4.9 million, the additional levy we would only be doing is 4.1 million because we got 800,000 or a little more than that, so we'd have a little less than 4.1 million in our levy. In the second year of that 2-year proposal, they increased per pupil aid $45 and increased the revenue limit per pupil $650. That's on top of the increases the first year. So that creates an extra $1.5 million approximately in budget room for us. So we take that $1.5 million, add the money we had for the previous year, $808,000, we get a total increase in our budget of $2.3 million. So in that case, instead of 4.9, we'd be doing 2.6 approximately. We'd be a little below 2.6. So that's how we would adjust it and adjust what we would use of the referendum. So we have to ask the community for the total amount, assuming the state doesn't do anything. If the state does this, this is how we reduce it. If the state does something different than this, we'll use the same formula and communicate that up to the community to show how we're making that adjustment. So it's kind of a complicated calculation. Any questions on that?
Just what is the revenue limit per pupil? What is the meaning of that with the state?
The revenue limit per pupil is the number we were talking about earlier, that $10,196 it is currently.
Yeah.
So that is, the way revenue limits are set, they are based on per pupil. So if a district's growing, their budget can grow, and if a district's shrinking, their budget goes down on a per pupil. So the revenue limit is a per student based formula to help out that caps our budget. So the state does a per pupil aid, which is an aid outside the revenue limit, and a per pupil amount on the revenue limit. They're both tied to the number of students, so it helps a growing district or a larger district more than it helps a smaller district or declining district. Does that make sense?
But to even beyond that point, Keith, maybe go back to this and say, even with the $350 per student, you can still see we're below what we didn't get for the last 2 years.
Right. The $350 per student doesn't even get us back to what we should have got this past year to keep up with inflation. So that's the point, that the state's talking about this as a budget to help schools out, but it's just not enough with the inflation we're seeing and the increases in cost, that we feel that in order to keep all the services at the level we've done them, that's not enough.
So this is the one that we're talking about.
Yeah, oh, and I didn't talk about the mill rate impact. I think that's important. So in that state budget proposal where we talked about a $1.98 mill rate impact, in the first year we'd have a $1.73 impact. The second year we'd be looking just over a $1.07 impact. So that mill rate impact goes down significantly if the state provides that additional funding. And that's assuming they provide the funding to match the revenue limit increases, which the state has been very good about when they do give a revenue limit increase, providing enough funding to offset it. I think that's all we've got tonight, so I think we're ready for questions. Any other questions? Hold on. No, that's old. I'm sorry, I got the old slides in there in case we needed to reference them. So, any questions? Okay, well, we appreciate your time tonight. We appreciate your interest in the referendum in the district. Kurt Myers and I are always available for questions. Call us or email us. We have a question up front.
So what is the plan to help encourage the community buy-in? We have a very unique district with landlocking and a lot of members, as Dr. May pointed out, who stay in this area because it is such a valuable space to be in. And so there's a number of folks who buy into referendums when their kids are in school, and once their kids have exited, there's not as much buy-in. So what is our approach to getting people to recognize the value that this provides to the community at large, not just those who are immediately receiving the benefits?
That's a great question, because we do have a lot of retirees who stay in the community, and experience has shown us they do an awesome job of supporting the district. They have always been there. They believed in the pay it forward their kids went through, and they want to make sure the future next generation has the same opportunities. And that's how we passed referendums in the past, because we know we have a high percentage of families that don't have kids in school. What we plan to do is communicate and be available and be transparent. So, as I said before, if someone has questions, we want to answer them. We're going to have a separate page on the website that deals with information on the referendum. We're going to have a question and answer page on that that talks about the questions that we were asked tonight. We're gonna have other questions come up, we're gonna put those out there. We're gonna do more community meetings once we get the survey results back and we know the exact amount we're asking. We're gonna do some more community meetings. So the model we used for the last referendum, we had several community meetings after the question was set. So in that January, February timeframe, to get all those questions out, give us a chance to make sure we're answering all the questions and make sure we can give people that reason to support it and help they understand what the needs are. So the key thing is, I think if people understand revenue limit and the needs, the idea of inflation increasing costs, but our budget not able to increase, that's really the key to understanding this referendum. Any other questions?
It's a great question, Troy, because it's a pretty close statistic across the state of Wisconsin. It's about 3/4, 75% of districts, the residents in the district do not have children in the school. And so that's a pretty average number across all districts. It's probably very similar to that.
Ashwaubenon is actually higher. From what I've been told, we're at 80 plus, almost 85%, unless that's changed in the last couple of years. So it is.
So more important than ever that we connect.
So our school board president just asked a question about the number of districts that have gone to referendum this year and what's planned. So, you want to take that question?
Sure. So I just spent 3 days at a state conference for superintendents, and for this November, so not even next April, this November, there are 40 school districts, a little over 40 school districts that are going for operational referendum. There are school districts who are going for a new school or other building type thing, but there are over 40 school districts that are going just for operational to meet the same needs that we're doing now. Depending on how school districts spent their ESSER funding, if school districts didn't provide any additional support for students through the ESSER funding, they could probably make it through another school year without having a referendum program. So many experts across the state are saying most school districts, if they're not going in November, they're not going in April, they're going to end up having a referendum the following school year because they will no longer have the ESSER funding to live with. Good question. Or Jake, actually. And we really want to hit home the point that we're only going to levy what we need. And so if the state does their part and gives us the support that we need, we'll have less and less of the amount of money that we need to levy. So we're only going to levy what is needed. And that's a commitment from our school board and from our administrative team.
I have one more question.
When will you start meeting to discuss the approaches to take if the referendum doesn't pass in any platform, so that there is an opportunity to have very well executed decision making for the hard decisions that have to be made?
So every year, our budget process starts in December for the following year. So the administrators here aren't going to be happy about it, but in December, we're going to have to start a plot process, assuming the referendum does not pass. So we're going to have to, because we've got to have staffing decisions made by April. Right after the referendum vote, we have to have staffing decisions made. So if we're going to make any staffing changes, meaning any layoffs of staff, that decision has to be made and approved by the board at their April meeting. So we are going to have a plan for if the referendum fails, if the referendum passes, and we're going to have 2 budgets, and it's going to be challenging because that's going to be a painful budget if the referendum fails.
So if it fails, which that is an asterisk on that comment, is there an opportunity for folks who are part of the public sector who are really good at writing grant proposals to be involved in helping to navigate the budgetary deficits to help maybe boost some of those gaps for some of those areas?
I would say if we have people in the community who are interested in helping us write grants, whether the referendum fails or passes, we'd be interested in meeting with them and looking at those opportunities. As I said, we've been making budget reductions for over 20 years, and there have been years when it's really challenging. We've been lucky the last couple of years that our health plan, we haven't seen increases that other companies and private and other public school districts have seen, and we've had smaller budget reductions. But if we can find other sources of funds, we definitely want to pursue them. We do have people who are writing grants on a regular basis and pursuing money that's out there, but we would welcome any help we can get on that. Not seeing any other questions, I'll just remind you that we want to answer your questions. We want to know if you have a question, somebody else probably has the same question. So let Kurt or myself know if you have questions. We'll add it to that question and answer page. We will, at future meetings, talk about it. At board meetings, we can talk about it. So we need that information. So please reach out if you have questions.
Complete the survey.
Complete the survey. The survey is going to be what guides the board on what actually comes forward as far as the referendum questions. So it's very important that we get responses on that survey. Thank you for your time.